Hello, everybody. This is Steve Rao, the host of the Leaders and Legends show on RadioNyra, and we are honored today to have another great leader with us today. Today, we're taking a little shift in our focus on the leader show to tech leaders, and we know that the elephant in the room is artificial intelligence, AI. Also, AI can be American and India, but today we're here to talk about AI technology. And, Fareed Zakaria had Jeffrey Hinton, who they call the godfather of AI in the global markets. But we have our very own Mark Hinkle, who has been dubbed the godfather of AI in the triangle. So, Mark, welcome to the show. He's a friend of mine. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive in.
Thanks for having me, Steve. My name, as Steve said, my name's Mark Hinkle. I am a 30-year emerging tech veteran, starting way back in the early days of the internet. My first gig was getting people online. Today, what I do is I'm very focused on awareness and upskilling for professionals for AI. So I have a company called Peripety Labs, and we consult with emerging tech companies as well as established companies that want to upskill their folks in AI, as well as we run an event series here in the Triangle called All Things AI. We do monthly meetups, and we have a big annual conference in Durham every March, so March 23rd and 24th.
And we have an event next week. We're talking about it at the end.
Yeah, we have an event where Steve is going to speak along with our Zach Hawkins, our congressman for NC State congressman for RTP and Durham.
And we're going to be talking about that. So let's just dive right in. We've got about 25 minutes, so a lot to pack in here. Let's first talk about AI. Everywhere we go, we're hearing about this topic. Conferences, shows, government leaders, my colleagues, everyone's talking about it. Tell me a little bit about just AI, your perspective of like John Chambers says, how do we make sense of all this noise to develop strategies? But I guess we could start with the trends that you're seeing and how we can learn from these trends.
So AI is overnight success that took 75 years. So it's been around since the 1950s, I think, is when they coined the term artificial intelligence at the Dartmouth conference. But what's really in the last couple years made AI accessible is ChatGPT came on the scene in November 22 and became the fastest growing consumer app in history. And I think that made it real to a lot of people. Obviously, the massive investment in it, but it is probably the most progressive technological advance in our lifetimes. And for today, there's a lot of promise in it. But just like every new technology, there's a futurist called Ray Amara, and he has Amara's law. And in the short term, we tend to overestimate a new technology. In the long term, we tend to underestimate it. So the internet, cell phones, things like that are examples. The desktop PC it was a huge jump forward, and everybody talked about it in the beginning. But I would say that today we are very, very early in this trend, and we've made some big leaps forward in the last couple of years. But it's still evolving as we sit here today.
The first trend you and I have talked about is agentic AI. So this is what we heard at the recent NC Tech Digital Summit run by the Department of IT. And that was a theme we heard, agentic AI. Talk a little about AI agents and these systems, and are these systems that we can use in governments and businesses? Talk to us about that.
So agentic AI is, if we think about just a simple ChatGPT is very task-oriented. We ask it a question, it gives us an answer. Agentic is very object-oriented. So for example, we're doing events here in Charlotte and Raleigh, and I wanted to get a press list of every press outlet within 100 miles of our venues. What an agent would do in the task base, we would say list it, and what it knew about, it would go and give us a list of all the press that model was trained on. An agent not only has the model knowledge, but it has tools like web search, and we say generate the press list. So it would look for all the press outlets in 100 miles, look for the ones that are relevant to our AI conference, and create the list. And then we can even ask it to export to a spreadsheet, Notion, whatever, Google Docs, whatever we're using. So that's the difference is agentics are goal-oriented, and the more complex the goal, the harder it is for AI to handle. So we break it up into little tasks.
And in Morrisville, for example, we're using agentic AI today. It was this year too. It's called Morris the Cricket, play on Cricket, where it's going to take on basic 311 information, like where do I get my waste picked up, when is offense. So, and the data can learn that. So these are ways that different governments and agencies can use.
Yeah. So Morris the Cricket would answer the question, but then be able to go check other systems, gather that information, and bring it back to the user. So that's called agentic search or agentic web, and it may be doing something called retrieval augmented generation, which is taking additional data from Morrisville's website and combining it with what the model, the brain, Morris knows, and making it better.
So that's a good segue into my next question. So, you talked about ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT, you were with me one day when he joked about me wearing a gold tie because we're talking about the bright future of AI. And I was speaking at an event, and what is generative AI has a lot of people concerned about jobs. So talk a little bit about what you think has to be done with upskilling workers, the kinds of things you're doing in your business, and just generative AI in general. Where's this thing going?
Yeah, so I think the future isn't written yet, and there's multiple ways this could go. First off, everybody should understand that AI, if you are a knowledge worker, is going to affect your life and your work life. It's going to affect virtually everyone's life, but from a jobs perspective, we are going to have jobs that are very task-oriented, that are great to be automated with agents. And then we're going to have new jobs that we haven't even thought about before. One of them, for example, is these large language models like OpenAI, like Google's Gemini, like IBM has Granite. All of these different large language models need data to be trained on. So in the future, we will spend more and more time labeling data. So if you had a video of a delivery route, you would need someone to go watch that video and label that so that you could train the navigation systems. That's an example of a new job. And I think the best example I can think of is when cars came around. We had a lot of blacksmiths, and those blacksmiths, it's a dirty job in more than one way. I mean, you're at the wrong end of the horse as you do that.
Yeah.
And then we had cars, and those blacksmiths became machinists. Okay. So I think in the AI world, we're going to have people that were doing things like a lot of the tasks that an executive assistant might do, like responding to emails, triaging emails. That's something that may go away, but then that frees their time up to do stuff that's more high value, like schedule better meetings, do more research for your boss, or set up or planning. All of these things that we never get to. And if you're one of those jobs where you finish on Friday going, man, I wish I would have gotten to this. I think that it's going to be better with AI, but I think we're always going to, we're as a species, we always want more. So
yeah,
but I do think that it will take out the low value repetitive work and replace it.
But I'm drawing inspiration from your remarks, because what you're saying, and I'm going to go to John Chambers again, because he said we're obsoleting jobs faster than we can replenish them. But we had an opportunity to create new jobs, and we pushed him on that. He said, well, the cloud came along, put a lot of people out of work, but new companies emerged. We put people where they were valued, and we had the highest GDP growth we ever had. And then it became that you had to invest in companies that had an internet strategy. So with that being said, how do you extend on that vision from Chambers?
Yeah, so I think there's two themes that I get when people talk about AI. One is efficiency. They want to do more with less. That is something that everybody's going to have access to as AI comes around. We're going to have more and more access to it. The price will go down as it did with cloud and the internet, cell phones. All of those things were expensive at the beginning. As they become part of mainstream, they go commoditize. Now, to John's point, is the thing that we really should look at is not how to be more efficient, because we'll eventually get there. Like market forces will make us all more efficient with AI. What we really want to look at is what could we do now with AI that we couldn't do before? So hopefully that means accelerating drug discovery. That means climate change. That means better government. There's a lot of, I know you were talking about Morris the Cricket. There's Chip Kennedy is the CEO of a local company called Civic Reach that I think you work with him as well. Taking this technology to streamline building permits, paying your parking tickets, getting other government services, or even services from private businesses. These are the things that I think are going to really, stuff that we are backing up with people are inefficient about. I mean, I know you're in Morrisville, but if you try and get a permit in some of these other towns, it's a little slow because they're understaffed and there's a lot of growth in this area. So all these things are upside that we haven't done before.
So, okay, great. And let's talk about innovation now. Yeah. So the opportunity is, we're going to talk about strategy at the end and a little bit about the governor's task force. We got about 12 more minutes. We're making good time here. Many of the new jobs, right? Startups. We often forget that SAS and Cree and Red Hat, Wolfspeed, which is probably having troubles at this point, they were all startups, right? Yep. Ro Khanna had said, Congressman Khanna was here virtually with us last week, $80 billion coming into Silicon Valley. NVIDIA, $14 trillion in his congressional district in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. How do we accelerate innovation in AI to create jobs? AI startups, working to support people like you and Tom Snyder from Riot. Mm-hmm. What do we have to do?
There's two things. Is one, we need good investment in startups here in the Triangle in North Carolina. And that's good because we don't need as much money. If you think about how much money is going into these startups, half the venture capital in the United States this year went to big startups. That's OpenAI, that's Anthropic, that's Scale AI, these mega hyperscale startups. And if we look back to the internet days, we invested a lot into Yahoo. Global Crossing is the company that laid fiber from the US to Europe, and Quest. None of those companies are still standalone entities anymore. But that big investment was recouped later by other companies. It's wasteful in a lot of ways, but it might be the only way forward. I'm saying that in North Carolina, I don't think we need hyperscale companies as much as we need more Red Hats, more Pendos, more SAS. SAS is the biggest private software company in the world for a while. Red Hat was the biggest software company acquisition at the time. Pendo looks like they're on fire to go public. So we don't need to have these mega scale companies. We need companies that stand the test of time. And Red Hat, SAS are all both 20 plus year companies that have done great things.
So just looking at more funding, whether it's
providing funding for companies that are really have a faster time to value than some of these huge plays, I think is important, because I'm not sure, that's like buying one of those Powerball tickets. I don't know about you, but I missed out on the $1 billion last week, and I'm sure hundreds of millions of other people did too. So I would rather hit singles all day long than hit a home grand slam, which would be nice, but that's a lot lower odds.
Yeah, maybe AI accelerators, innovation. Yeah. We're going to bring you back for another show on it. Yeah. It's a separate topic. Let's get it real quickly on energy, and then I want to get into a little bit about the governor's AI task force and talk about AI strategy, because pilots, where to begin, pitfalls, things like that. Let's talk about energy. So we asked Himanshu Shah on the previous interview. He chairs the Shah Capital Fund, a $1 billion hedge fund, chairs a pharmaceutical company, Marius, and I asked him the same question because he also chairs an energy company called Amarin. But 30,000 chat GPT search daily, consume about 30,000 enough electricity to consume 30,000 homes.
Mm-hmm.
Data centers, we need them, but there's so much computing power being required.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to, if there's AI companies are starting and everyone's going to use AI, where are we going to find the power and energy to power these things?
Well, I started out in the early days of the internet, so I will say it will come, but I'm not sure how. But there's a couple things. Back in the day, the fastest that you could get on internet speed in 95 was 14.4 kilobytes per second, and the limiting factor was bandwidth. People would connect with before even DSL, analog phone lines. And then we came up with a better technology, which was DSL and cable. And now we have an even better technology called fiber to the curb. And a lot of this area has fiber to the homes. So that becomes solved. And as far as data centers go, I think the first thing is the large language models that are driving things today are not the same technology that will make AI successful in the long term. They're very, very energy dependent. They're very dependent on GPUs, which NVIDIA is the leader there. I think we will still use GPUs, but someday we may use quantum or another technology. All these technologies will evolve. The thing that we have to think about is from our local standpoint, and you as a leader in our local governments, is our infrastructure being built out to grow with AI and address not only the massive amount of people moving into the area, but we also need to make sure that we have power and data lines in those areas that can handle it. And if you drop a data center in an area that starts sucking power, it can suck power away from other concerns, and they cause brownouts. That's what you see in California, because where Texas has basically their power grid is crumbling. So those are just the considerations. I think we're pretty good because we're a more modern community where we've had a lot of modern.
Well, this topic, play on words, is charging me up.
It's charging you up as you.
We're going to talk to Duke Energy. We're going to keep moving. We've got a few more minutes. Let's dive in. I want to combine a few questions because I want to end the interview talking about some big events coming up. Governor Stein last week announced the creation of an AI Leadership Council. Representative Zach Hawkins, we know him. He's going to be leading that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be chaired by Secretary Piccioni and Secretary Lilly. The DIT under Piccioni has a new deputy AI secretary that's going to be doing pilots for AI. But first, what advice do you have for the governor for the AI Task Leadership Council?
So I think that the biggest bit of advice that I have for them is to drive as much participation with private companies as possible, because that's where the innovation happens. So, get feedback from companies that are doing business in North Carolina to understand what the advantages are and what kind of things that we need as a government service. The second thing that I can say is I feel like the biggest problem we see right now is people over-investing in technology ahead of upskilling their people. Mm-hmm. And this has been a headline for the last couple months. I don't think it's because the technology is bad, but if they pull up two F-15s in the parking lot and say, Mark and Steve, take them for a ride without training us, I think we're going to have a wreck. I think the same thing is happening to a lot of AI pilots, is just investing in the tech, which is changing so fast you can hardly keep up, ahead of upskilling your people. So that's probably my biggest thing.
Oh, that's great. And I think this is a work in progress.
Sure.
As we look at any advice you have before we get to your events to close out, any advice for governments that want to begin? How do we begin or just businesses, governments? We have a lot of cities listening to the show. How do I develop an AI strategy? Which should be, is it customer service? Is it productivity? Is it a combination of that? And then any concerns about pilots that we should be thinking about?
Yeah. So I think that I'm going back to my past comments on efficiency versus things that new opportunities. So the easy low-hanging fruit right now is efficiency, especially for customer service, providing information more effectively. most of our data that we store is not nice and neatly stored in databases. It's unstructured. AI unlocks a lot of that data, and governments collected a lot of data, so they could find, more. It should be easier to find crime cells to make your public safety people more effective. It should be easier to do budget audits. It should be easier for people in these governments to provide better service to their constituency. And that's where I would start today, along with, and always, continuous learning to make sure that they're at the forefront of what comes down the pike.
Well, that's a great way to sum up before we get into some events. An AI strategy that's helping us differentiate our products, helping us provide better service to our customers, whether that's citizens, residents, upskilling our workforce. Mm-hmm. And we didn't talk about ethics and security, but that's also something that we need to be concerned about, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
And energy. Okay, well, the last wrap-up question is talk a little bit about events coming up. We have one coming up next week. I want you to talk about that in Durham. It's called the AI State of the Union.
Mm-hmm. So next week at the Durham Armory, September 13th at 6 o'clock, we will be having a panel. We'll have leaders from government. So we have yours truly here. Steve will be on our panel. We're going to have our opening remarks by Zach, who's going to talk about the governor's NC AI initiative, the council. I think it's a really good thing for North Carolina. The president, and regardless of your political affiliation, this is one time where this issue affects everyone. So we got to be on top of the fact that this is going to affect our government, our lives, our people, our kids, our country. So learning and interacting with the leaders. But we have Zach opening up with outlining Governor Stein's plan and what's going on there. Then we'll have a panel with yourself, me. We have really interesting folks. Greg Boone, CEO of Walk West. He runs a marketing agency that is growing really quickly using AI. We have Todd Quarterier, who is from the FAIH, which is all about AI and health. We have Aaron Delp from Equinox talking about what we were just talking about earlier, the infrastructure around AI. We have Dean Peters. He's a product manager. So the whole idea is we want to provide educational opportunities for people in the Triangle to stay ahead of that. So we do these meetups every month on the 13th, as I said. We have another big one at the Armory on December 3rd. Next month in Raleigh, we have All Things Open, and we're partnered with them. And we have 30 or 40 AI talks for All Things Open. So that's allthingsopen.org. The meetups are All Things AI Live on meetup.com, and is a good place to get information on many, many free learning opportunities in Triangle.
Well, Mark, we want to thank you so much for being with us. We want to thank RadioNyra, and I always close out with a final take, but we have a lot of tech leaders in our Indian American communities at Indian Station. The three big ones, Satya Nadella from Microsoft, Sundar Pichai from Google, and Arvind Krishnan from IBM, the three big tech, all Indian Americans. We're very proud. But this is a conversation, folks, all across the region. AI. What kind of a state do we want to be? An AI economy, an AI region, what you and I have called an AI emergent state, focusing on productivity, customer service, the jobs of the future. We want to thank you for being with us. We look forward to engaging with anyone listening to the show to send Mark Hinkle your ideas. And I want to thank Ravi Chirakuri and the team for the Leader Show. And if you're interested, just shoot me a note. But Mark, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And maybe one day the AI will be doing the interview itself. But
That's
today
right.
we got Steve Rao. Thank you.
Cheers, man.